Hello again, and welcome back to Recreation Rendezvous, the Bloomington Parks and Recreation podcast, talking about all things parks, all things recreation here in Bloomington, Indiana. Coming to you today from the Banneker Community Center podcast studio. And we are delighted to have in the studio with us today a very special guest. Jaime Sabbach with 110% is working with a company, her company, 110%, that is working on the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. So I invited Jaime to be on the podcast today to talk about what makes master planning interesting. So there we go. Full disclosure, this is going to be a super interesting topic. And this is really cool because, Jaime, you worked for Parks and Recreation back in the day. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey, Julie. Well, thank you for having me. I feel incredibly privileged and quite excited to have the opportunity to facilitate and lead the master plan for Bloomington Parks and Recreation. I did indeed work for the department. I was the recreation director from 1997 to 2001. And it's a bit of a homecoming. You know, if you think about it, if you have the opportunity to work for a community, a city that you actually served for many years, it's a privilege. And and it was a big part of who I am today. You know, it was a bit of a homecoming and a bit of an opportunity to kind of look in the rearview mirror and appreciate where I was. And this is a very special place.
You have spent your career in the recreation field. Are you an IU graduate, or you came from some other academic place?
Yeah, I came from some other place. I'm actually from Chicago originally, so I'm a Midwestern kid. And I worked in the state of Illinois for many years in park and recreation systems, worked for the city of Bloomington for 5 years, had the chance to teach part-time at IU, which is, it was a special time as well. I love this community for many reasons. Part of the love and admiration is simply because it's a town gown, and IU is here, and I love Indiana University. And then I had a chance to teach for 2 years full-time at Illinois State University, so I ended up moving back to Illinois before actually taking a position with the city of Boulder, Colorado, where I was superintendent of Parks and Recreation for the city of Boulder, which is what took me out west. And after that, ended up in the consulting world. So we call it crossing over, into the dark side or to the dark side. But I've had quite an interesting journey. I feel very privileged to have been an educator, and now a consultant, and of course, someone who's served the field for over 20 years.
Yeah, and how interesting to bring your company then back to Bloomington to work on our master plan. So, of course, 2025, it's a big year for Bloomington. The city is doing its whole rebranding strategy. Parks and Recreation is a department of the city of Bloomington, and it just so happens in the clash of the things that happen at the same time that Parks and Recreation is also doing its 5-year master plan. So, Jaime, your company's kind of in charge. No, you are in charge of the master plan process. So, should probably start with why do we do this? What is master planning? This is your 30-second elevator pitch. What is master planning, and why are we doing it?
Well, master planning, I think historically, conventionally, has been thought of as a vision plan. It's what do we want to be when we grow up? That narrative changes a little bit when a system is mature. Bloomington Parks and Recreation is not a new system. It has an incredibly rich history, very proud of its tradition. But this is an opportunity to pause and think about what's next. What we really want to do, frankly, as facilitators of plans is work very closely with the professional staff. No one knows the system better than those who serve the community, boots on the ground, the content matter experts. It gives us a perspective through their lens about what's happening not only in the community, but what's happening organizationally and operationally. Of course, we want to engage the community and get their thoughts and perspectives. We want to be very cautious. We're not just looking to the future. We want to make sure we understand what's happening in the moment. If you think about today, we live in a very, we'll say, unpredictable reality. The economy's changing, the environment's changing, society's changing. So while we want to be somewhat ambitious, we have to be very careful that ambition doesn't trump endurance, essentially. Cities are about enduring for future generations. And so in this case, 5 years is really a very short period of time, but we want to help this organization understand where they are in this moment, appreciate that, embrace it, and then think about where they need to go over the course of the next 3 to 5 years. We all know things are changing so dramatically today that is quite a charge to think about where we could be in 5 years, but gives us a chance to really think about, again, what's the next chapter in our journey? Where will we end up next? And so that's what we're doing right now alongside the staff and the community.
And in the parks and recreation field, there are trends, right? So we refer back to a lot of trends. So back in the 90s, it was racquetball. Everybody played racquetball and it was the big thing. And now, of course, fast forward to the 2000s and pickleball's the big thing. But this isn't about just responding to trends or looking at what's most popular right now and building or creating or making. This is more of a deep dive into, like you said, the history, what's in the community now and what will serve the community best in the future.
Exactly. And, we have to be paying attention to what's happening with the population. Are you stabilized? Are you growing? Are you seeing maybe less people in the community over the next 3 to 5 years? Yes, we want to be paying attention to what trends are, but sometimes we misinterpret fads for trends. Just because something's around for a couple of years doesn't necessarily mean it's smart for a city that uses taxpayer resources to invest in a fad if we don't know it's going to stick. And frankly, a lot of provocation is in the public park and rec space right now around where is it Parks and Rec should focus its energy and its resources, its time, its money, its space in order to have the greatest impact on the community as a whole. We can be very ambitious again and say that, we want all of these things in a community, but we also have to be able to pay for it. We have to be able to take care of it. And we talk a lot about the common good. What's in the best interest of the common good in contrast to just individual interests. And that's not to dismiss individual interests, but it's to recognize that we really have to be thinking about how can this organization best serve the common good, the greater good, the public good in a particular community. And that's what we're doing here.
And that leads us to a question about one of the most important parts of the master plan process, and that's getting community input. So how do we number one, get community input, hear from all the voices in our community, people who want things in parks or who use our parks, and then how do we make sure that all those voices are heard?
Yeah, I would suggest we're not going to hear from all voices. Not going to say it's impossible, but it's quite a charge and task to suggest you're going to hear from 60,000, 80,000, 100,000 people. You're likely not going to do that. We want to give folks an opportunity to share their thoughts and opinions and perspectives on not only their interests and desires, but what they believe the needs of the community are. Those are very different things. A need is not a want. And we want to be thoughtful about making efforts to reach out so that we can have representative voices. And what I mean by that is it's not so much about how many people we hear from, it's who we hear from and how representative they are of the broader community. Are we hearing from folks who live in different neighborhoods? Are we hearing from folks who have different interests and desires? Are we hearing from different demographic representatives? Are we hearing from youth? Are we hearing from older adults? And so that's really our charge. Again, to say we're going to hear from everyone, I would suggest is close to impossible, but we do our best to hear from as many people as we can. More importantly, again, that we have representative voices participating. We've had focus group meetings, which really intend to hear from a variety of different folks in the community who represent different interests. We have a questionnaire that's going to be going out soon. We're going to be doing a statistically valid survey, and I know that sounds very academic, but it's a survey essentially distributed to households in the community. We're hoping everyone will take a few minutes and fill that out. So we're encouraged. We try to be thoughtful about how we reach out to folks, and we're hopeful that people will engage. But we also understand it takes time, and we hope that people will take the time to tell us what they think.
So we know that we'll hear from members of our community who say, my opinion doesn't matter, or I've been trying to get this accomplished or something done for years and no one listens, or but what I have to say just isn't going to be included in the grand master plan. So what message do you have for a group of people who don't feel like they have a voice?
Yeah, and I can appreciate that. I mean, we all are taxpayers in our communities, and we all, I think, sometimes can be frustrated with government and process. And, arguably today there are some that don't trust government. But I think those in local government would suggest and contest that we really do want to hear what people think. We are interested in what people think. The reality is it's difficult to give everybody what they want or what they expect. And your voice matters. Even if you don't necessarily get exactly what it is you want, people are listening to what you have to say. There are difficult choices that have to be made today, and there are trade-offs. You know, if a park and rec department puts in a pickleball court, that means they can't do something else. If they build a softball complex, that means they can't do something else. If they invest in a farmer's market, that means they can't do something else. However, those choices they made were made with intention. They did that because they felt like it was a good thing for the community. And so, again, it's important. It's like folks tell you, right? It's important to vote. Your voice matters. We don't always get what we want, but it's not that people aren't listening. These organizations, this community, Bloomington Parks and Recreation, is doing its best to invest and spend and provide services that are going to have the greatest impact on the broader community, even if sometimes that doesn't mean they're going to satisfy every individual interest or special interest in the community. It doesn't mean that it doesn't matter. It's just sometimes difficult to, provide services for everyone.
You shared with the staff a really relevant case study of a community, I believe it was in Texas, that voted to build a new aquatics facility through a voting process, or had lobbied the city council. And then the Parks Department went back to the community to ask for money to run the aquatics facility in the next couple of years. And that referendum got voted down a couple years in a row. So that is such a valid and interesting study on how excited we get about the newest big thing, but then the reality of the stuff that's not as sexy, like the compressor in the ice arena or the pavement in the parking lot. And that's a tough pill to swallow when you want a new water slide. So that's what the kinds of things that this master plan is intended to address, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And again, it's not about, this isn't about telling people no. This is about really understanding the conditions and realities of the community, the organization, and making really informed, intelligent decisions moving forward on behalf of the community. One of the things we say a lot is, it's really, really important and very, I would say not very, but it's easy to focus on the citizens of 2025, right? They're here and now. But what we have to be thinking about through the entire process is the decisions and choices that are made and the recommendations and how they're going to influence and impact the citizens of 2050. That's our fundamental responsibility in local government. That's our fundamental responsibility in the work that we do. To go out and say, would you like a pool? A lot of people would say, absolutely. But when you attach a dollar sign to that, say, well, it's going to cost this much to construct, and it's going to cost this much to operate, and it's going to cost this much to maintain over its life cycle, which could be 40, 50, 60 years. Think about Mills Pool and Bryan Park Pool. They're 50 and 60 years old. These assets require ongoing investment. And when they get to their 30th and 40th year, that's when the greatest investment needs to happen. And sometimes we have dated assets because we aren't investing year over year. We get enamored with building, and sometimes we just forget we have to take care of these things. And so this is really important for communities to understand. Again, it's not about saying no. It's about saying what needs to be said in relation to reality. And that's our job and our role as the facilitators and the leaders, if you will, of these planning efforts, is to ask a lot of questions, be very intentional listeners, and critically think through the exercise so that when we make recommendations, they're very rational, they're justifiable, they're defensible, and they're easy to understand. And that is important. We live in a day and age where, everyone's a taxpayer, but sometimes we don't understand that our taxes don't always pay for everything that we want. And so we've got to tell that story and be very thoughtful about the story that we're telling.
Well, Bloomington Parks and Recreation is so happy to have Jaime Sabbach with 110% in town here in the summer of 2025 off and on, and then in the fall of 2025 with a statistically valid community interest survey to put all the data together to come up with Parks and Recreation's updated 5-year master plan. If you're listening to the podcast and you want to find out more about our master planning process or anything that's going on in Parks and Recreation, you can always visit us online at bloomington.in.gov/park. So, Jaime, thank you again. Thanks so much for being on the podcast with us today.
Thank you, Julie. I appreciate it.
And way out there in podcast land, thank you for listening to Recreation Rendezvous. Of course, you can find us wherever you find your favorite podcast. And a big thank you and shout out to Caleb Poor, our podcast wizard, who makes all the podcasts sound amazing. On behalf of the City of Bloomington, Indiana Parks and Recreation Department, this is Julie Ramey signing off on another episode of Recreation Rendezvous.